Alright guys, welcome back from another video on HAIKYU Fly High. Now, a few people have been asking me in the comment section on the best memory for SP Hoshimi Korai, because in my build guide for him, I mentioned that the best memory for him is going to be his own. However, at the same time, if you have watched some of my own kind of account planning videos, etc., you also know that I personally am planning to actually get Tanaka's memory and max dupe as well for my SP Hoshimi Korai in the future. Now, obviously, this memory is not actually in the game right now, so that's kind of what I didn't mention in my build guide. However, I kind of want to take this opportunity to kind of address this because I know a lot of people have been asking me about it, and also at the same time reviewing all of both the current and also the future Wind Spiker memories to talk about why those two memory are both best choices for him, and probably you do actually want to get both as well. Okay, but let me just go through all of the Wind Spiker memory as a whole. So first of all, in the UR memory section, this one, Bokuto's memory, is very good as a support memory because it has the ability which allows you to extend him morale awakening even if the person is not actually doing an action. Okay, as long as you have someone equipping this memory on the field at once, like he can even be subbed off afterwards, you will be able to trigger this effect. So that's kind of what this is, more of a supporting Wind Spiker memory. At the same time, I guess I also want to talk about two other supporting memory, which is going to be this one for Ginjumas. As long as you spike once, you're then able to actually get the basic stats for all of your players. So this is very good in club contests when you put it on someone such as SSR Tanaka. When you try to actually score 1 point or to get that power spike buff, this is going to be quite useful. But eventually, this memory will also be replaced by Futakuchi's memory as well, because this one is just simply able to offer even bigger buff when you actually do a power spike ultimate. Okay, so those three Wind Spiker memory I just mentioned, so Bokuto's one, Futakuchi's one, and also Ginchima's one, those are the supporting memory that you can have on a Wind Spiker. Normally the idea is that this person wouldn't actually be doing a spike for you, they will just be on the field temporarily to get a buff for the remainder of the match for you. Okay, then the next section of WinSpark memory are the receive focus ones. So for those one, we are able to get Iwazu Yumi's memory. We are also able to get Kita's memory and also Hanamaki's memory. Okay, all three of them are focused on improving your receive, and a lot of time actually requires a receive skill as well. Okay, so those are only mainly going to be used for the three characters which the picture are shown as well, because they are actually the support, the receiving ones, also for the Wind Spiker. But if for whatever reason you also want to build, let's say, your Hoshimi Korai for receive purposes rather than power spiking, which I personally don't recommend, but in case you want to have some fun and try it out, then those three memories could be good choices to further buff up your receive. But vast majority of the time, like I said, you want to build your SP Hoshimi Korai for power spiking instead. Okay. Now, out of the two remaining UR memory for Wind Spiker, I already mentioned this in my build video, but even when you max dupe them, they're not going to be as good as a single copy of the SP memory. Okay, the reason for this is the SP memory. If you actually have it even at no dupe at all, it's 6% basic stat and up to 20% attack and defense technique. Whereas if you take a look at the UR Hoshimi Korai memory, it's essentially the other way around. So you have 20% basic stat and only 6% attack and defense technique. And in this game, attack and defense technique are just a lot more valuable than the basic stats, purely because it's a lot harder for you to buff them up. So therefore 20% of basic stat could be diluted by other basic stats that you'll be able to get. However, 20% attack and defense technique will be diluted slightly less, purely because the teammate buff for attack and defense technique are just a bit more rare. Okay, so that's kind of what, even if you have this at 5 max dupe, it's still not going to be as valuable as a single copy of the SP memory, in my opinion. And same thing for Sakuza's one. This one's able to only give 15% attack technique, so first of all, it's already lower than what SP memory is able to offer. Even if you go for max dupe, this doesn't change. And whilst it's able to improve your spirit by up to 32%, this very much requires you actually doing receive. And to be honest, even if you want to improve your receive ability, the fact that SP memory can buff up 20% defense technique, once again, in my opinion, is better than a 32% buff in spirit anyway. So both of them are not going to be the best choices for SP Hoshimi Korai's memory, when you can just get literally one copy of his own. Now, in terms of the other SP memory, which I briefly skipped over, this one for SP Bokuto is very much awakening dependent. So vast majority of the time, you probably wouldn't be equipping this because it kind of basically only gives you one massive buff every, I don't know, let's say 2 or 3 rallies, because it is very much dependent on this condition of the awakening being at the 6 ball touches. But obviously, if you're actually able to trigger this off, this is actually quite significant buff because it's able to improve both your attack technique and also your strengths. Now, like I said, this is more suitable for characters which would only be spiking during Timura Awakening. For someone such as SP Hoshimi Korai, especially if you actually have him as skill than 4 in combination with SP Hiragami, he'll be spiking a lot more frequently. Therefore, this memory is not going to be a good choice either. And then out of the other future ones, you basically then end up with Tanaka's memory, you have Yamamoto's memory, and then you have this new Yuji memory as well. Okay, now Yamamoto's memory basically buff up strength. Now the same with SP Hoshimi Korai, especially him as skill and 4. The fact is that he's actually able to get like a whooping 300% buff, or maybe like 250% buff in his strength if you go very lucky and cap everything. So a strength buff to him is not that valuable, purely because SP Hoshimi Korai can already get plenty of him. Okay, so this one you can also rule it out. And then for Yuji's one, this one is dependent on your team actually performing a save. Now, this like save action in general in this game just very RNG dependent. The only way you can actually force a save is if you actually play Yuji Terushima himself as well. So basically, if you do actually want to take advantage of this, it's not just saying that you need to get the memory. You also need this character as well as one of your teammates. So once again, I'm not sure whether that's the most ideal way of doing it. And then the other thing is that even if you actually do all of this, even at max level, the only thing it's able to provide is 100% spike power buff. Whereas if the alternative, which is the last memory I haven't covered, which is Tanaka's one, if you can actually max do it, it's actually going to be 120% power attack buff. And the condition for this to trigger, in my opinion, is a lot easier because it just requires the enemy to have a debuff as opposed to Yuji Terashima's one where you actually need to do a save, which is a bit more RNG dependent unless you play Yuji himself. Okay, so that's kind of why initially if it just goes through all of the memory, it can then pretty much rule out every single other ones, and the only 2 left behind is going to be either SP Hoshimi's own memory or it's going to be this one for Tanaka. Now, how do you actually decide between them? And personally, I will actually recommend you guys go for both of them as well. Okay, the way I look at them is that basically, if you can actually get the enemy with a debuff, then Tanaka's memory is going to provide the best value because it's literally able to give you 120% spike power increase. Now, this is not to be confused with increasing power attack, okay? They're 2 different multipliers. Your 120% is basically on top of, let's say, your normal skill multiplier. Ultimate skill multiplier normally tend to be, 300%, 400% already. So that's kind of why this number is a lot higher. However, having said that, increasing spike power is quite rare in this game as well, just similar to like attack and defense technique. Those are quite rare for teammates to actually buff it up for you. So that's kind of what this is going to be very, very good value for that. And also as you actually level up, it just provides really, really strong upgrade as well as you do get up, okay? But this one is obviously very, very good. And I would say this one actually allow Koshimi Korai to hit harder because basically in my opinion, 120% power attack buff, spike power buff, is just going to be much better than 20% attack technique buff because this one literally doesn't change as you actually do it up. Now, the only problem with this is that it requires the enemy to have a debuff, and this is somewhat tricky in PvP. Now, in PvE, well, not PvE, but basically in club contest or kind of those scoring game modes, this is actually very easy to trigger because you can always play similar teams in order to make sure the enemy has a debuff, and because the enemy would hardly ever change their rotation because it would just be scoring off the points, it's actually very easy to sustain that debuff on the enemy as well because most rallies will probably only finish in like 4 net crossing. However, in PvP against other players, as your team rotates, it's actually going to be a lot harder for you to actually sustain this debuff. So personally, I will say this memory is only really suited in game mode such as club contest. Now, you might be thinking that in the future, there is going to be another character, which is going to be Kita, who is actually able to give a debuff for all of the teammates. However, the problem with this is that you have to remember, yes, you may be able to get SP Kita in order to give all of the enemy debuff. However, the enemy could just as much have SP Kita as well, which then allow them to remove the debuff. And especially if you actually have him as skill resonance 4, what you don't realize is the rate that you'll be gaining the debuff, which is only once at the end of each round, whereas you will be removing debuff every single time when he does a receive. And that skill resonance 4, he literally has no cooldown on his receive. So it's actually a lot easier for Kita to remove debuff than giving debuff to the opponents. So because of that, even with Kita being out in the future in PvP, I still don't think Tanaka's memory is going to be the most sustainable way for you guys to actually score really high or just do very well to order to land the debuff to buff it up in PvP matches. Okay, so to me, this one is very much just for club contest. Whereas for SP Hoshimi Kora's one, this to me is actually the preferred option in PvP matches because first of all, it's a lot less condition based. You don't need to have any kind of condition such as landing debuff or to have a save, etc. in order to trigger it. All you need to do is basically Hojime Korai do different actions which can easily be achieved by himself. And then the other thing is remember, unlike club contest where you only need Hoshi Mikorai to basically do massive amount of spike, try to go for as high power as possible. In PvP, you also need to have balance out without the block receive, and possibly he actually need to do both action as well as your team rotate. So as a result, it's also important to focus on some of his defensive buff. And for that reason, SP Hoshi Mikorai's own memory, which is able to buff out his own basic stat, as well as defense technique, is also going to be helpful in those kind of PvP scenario. Okay, so basically TLDR, if you don't want to watch the whole video, if you are purely going for club contest, personally I think Tanaka's memory is going to be the best choice, especially if you can't do max Dubia. If you're going for PvP, then Hoshimi Korai's memory is going to be the best choice. Now, if you want to go for both, which is going to be my recommendation, and you have limited resources, personally I would just say get one copy of his own memory because this one, the upgrade as you actually upgrade it up is not that much. However, for Tanaka's one, you can actually go for max dupe in order to get this insane upgrade. However, having said that, if you do actually have lots of tickets lying around, then yes, you can also go for dupes on his own memory as well, which I will do in a bit, because at the end of the day, this still increases all of your basic stats, and in PvP matches, your team power is quite important, and obviously as you dupe up a memory, it's going to improve your team power, and that's basically the main reason you'll be using it in PvP matches. So if you do actually happen to have a spare resource lying around, it's not a bad choice to upgrade it, but it's certainly not necessary. Alright, now let's do some summoning for his memory. I already got one copy, but now let's actually dupe it up, so I'm going to try to aim for another full. Like I said earlier, very much a pay to win thing to do, so don't try this unless you have absolutely loads of resources lying around. I would say, probably say a rough rule of thumb, try to save at least 500 memory tickets available for when Tanaka's memory is going to be out, just for club contests, etc. Or if you don't care about club contests, then you can ignore that and just go all out here. But yeah, basically, if you do have some spare tickets lying around, SP Hoshimi Korai's own memory is actually going to be a decent investment purely because of how versatile the character is, and because he will be in all of your teams, you might as well max dupe his memory because his memory will stay with him in all of your different PvP matches as well. Okay, so yeah, so let's just go and summon for him. For my very first copy of Spit Shafter, I think I only got it in like 96, 97. So hopefully I can get better luck here. I also really like this new quality of life update where it just dismantle for me automatically. Very much like that. Okay, so normally from memory, to be honest, you don't normally see anything till the last 20 pulls. So let's just go through this quickly. I'm not really expecting. Oh, this one's early, I feel like. So I got the 80 or 90 summons exactly, it feels like. Because I started on 99. Well, actually, I can tell. I started with 1480, 1480. Now I'm at 1380, and I just run 20 summons. So yeah, so I got the first copy or the first dupe in 80 summons exactly. So that's lucky. Because I believe the rate only stopped boosting after 70 or 80. Let's see whether we can repeat the luck here. Nope. Okay, not bad. At least I didn't have to go to pity. So this one I think I got in like 90 something, just over 90. So that's two dupes right now. I had to go for two more dupes. Okay. Ooh, this one's lucky, somewhat early, because I was 24 away from pity. And now I'm 100 exactly. So I got this 14 early. So 86 summons. Nice. Okay, last one. Hopefully we don't have to go to pity for this either. I think I have only ever got one memory very early. It was, oh yeah, it was for my all Car Wars memory. And also Kongan Car Wars one. I actually got them back to back. That was amazing luck. I think those were the only occasion where I got a character early. Sorry, I got a memory early. But now, yeah, last 10 pulls. Hopefully we don't get shafted. Nope, we didn't, because the pity went to 93. So nice. All right, that's gonna be it. So now let's just max awaken him, or max awaken the memory. Here we go. This is actually my first SP memory, which I have max duped.